I'm your host, CrashLit. A lot of news to discuss in USC athletics, both for last week and what is upcoming this week. So let's dive into all of it right here, right now. Before you do, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Apple, Spotify, we should be there. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube. And be sure to check me out on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific time on The Voice of College Football with Matt Zemek and Ethan Inman to hear more discussion about USC football. So let's start there with USC football, especially because there's been a bit of news, especially with backup quarterback Husan Longstreet announcing that he will go to LSU. And I actually talked about it in depth on The Voice of College Football in a bonus video that I did with Ethan Inman about a few things that jumped out at me. Husan Longstreet's father, Kevin, it sounded like they were saying, yeah, they were hoping he would start, but also their concern was that, at least what Kevin Longstreet told on 3 was that they were concerned, okay, what, something happens to Riley next year, and then Longstreet's got to learn a whole new system. So even if he's a backup at LSU under Lane Kiffin, which, yes, Lane Kiffin, he is going there to play for a former USC coach, it's unlikely that Kiffin will be fired after 1 year. So I think the Longstreets felt that, okay, Husan can back up for a year and then be ready to assume that starting role from Arizona State Arizona State transfer quarterback Sam Leavitt, who's likely going to be the starter at LSU. But I think this move really, but also it sounds like what happened was just probably in part because how he played, it sounded like there was just Sports Illustrated, there was just like a bit of a disconnect and erosion of trust. So just really it seems like possibly how Longstreet was played, because if you're going to play him, why is he just running one play game against Illinois and Notre Dame and then you're kind of keeping his red shirt? So it's really just tough to see that, how that went down, especially because, could have been a good fit there and he probably would have been in position to assume the starting role. But Lincoln Riley wasn't going to turn to him because, like I said last week, I think Lincoln Riley knows he's coaching for his job. And yeah, he was in a use him or lose him situation with Longstreet, but the same was the case with Jade Mayava. He had to pick one to be the starter, and he ultimately went with Mayava because he thinks he's got the better shot to win with Mayava, which I fully agree with. Everyone was all hyped about Longstreet, and I get it. Like, I think that's great, but I don't think that. I think when you have Mayava on your roster, you got to go with him. Riley had to go with him. He needs that chance to win. He can't be trying to play the future game. Well, you always kind of have to, but right now, Lincoln Riley really has to be focused on the present, as in the 2026 season. So that's where that is. And then big news is USC right now seems to be appears to be in talks with former TCU head coach Gary Patterson, who Riley was very close with from when he was head coach of Oklahoma, and reportedly was kind of upset when Patterson was let go when TCU let Patterson go. So I guess it makes sense. It sounds like Patterson's put up good defenses over the years, so not opposed to this one, and Patterson will likely be a Hall of Fame in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I think it could be a good hire. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, it seems like Pete Kwiatkowski is pretty much out. Mark Stoops doesn't seem like what would happen given everything. And we'll see. Some of the other candidates don't really seem to seems like kind of this is the main candidate USC is talking to. So this one could work out. I'm interested to see. I think what probably makes it tricky is our coaches all wondering if Lincoln Riley gets fired, then I got to find a new job next year. So that probably complicates things. So I think there's a lot of things going in that's making it a short list, and probably also the fact that, like I've said, if Gary Patterson or whoever else is made the defensive coordinator, hell, even if they promote internally, which I don't think they should do, you got to let that guy hire the coaches that he wants to hire, especially when your head coach is an offensive-minded guy. If this is on the offensive side of the ball, I'd be like, okay, like I could see Lincoln Riley wanting to be more involved in it because he knows that side of the ball. It makes sense. But he doesn't know the defensive side of the ball. So you got to let whoever you bring in the guys that he wants to bring in. So if Patterson wants to clean house and bring in all his guys, you got to let him. If he wants to keep all the remaining coaches on staff, you let him do that. He'll probably go somewhere in the middle, but you got to let him have that option. So we will see what happens. Obviously, we'll see which other coaches, if any, end up following Danton Lynn to Penn State. So very interested to see how all that goes, but it will be very interesting to see what happens there. Other bit of news I did want to touch on is with Alani Noah signing back on for 2026, USC will have all 5 of its starting offensive linemen returning. So obviously there could be some changes with the guys coming in, getting better, but I'm really impressed with just the fact they're able to get all 5 of their starters back. So I think it's really huge for this offensive line, especially with how well they played. And, especially really doing, I thought for the most part, good job protecting Jaden Mayava. So that's the football news for this week. Obviously, I'll make sure to bring you something every week. So now let's move on to men's basketball, who got an 88-71 win against Maryland on Tuesday. Jordan Marsh led the way with 20 points and 4 assists, and Gabe Dines led with 8 rebounds. So USC struggled at times. It was back and forth, especially when I was able to get to the TV and turn on that game. Trojans were in a bit of a struggle, but ultimately they were able to beat Maryland and do it pretty convincingly. So impressed with that. Especially interested to see how kind of USC has really managed to, for the most part, adjust well despite all the injuries, the addition of Cam Woods. I'll talk more about that because that was definitely a topic in this next game when USC lost 69-64 against number 5 Purdue on Saturday. So before I talk about the game, just Purdue fans, they traveled well. I went to Rockin' Riley's in the USC Village for lunch, and they took over the place. They took over USC's campus. They practically took over Southern California. I remember my dad texted me and was like, yeah, I'm seeing Purdue fans everywhere. And he's like, yo, and they're like, why else would we be here? And especially, too, when you factor in, obviously, mainly they're more into their men's team, but, they won it. I'm sure there are a few holdovers that went to the women's game the day after. Obviously, they play UCLA tomorrow, so you get that one. And then plus potentially even Purdue women's plays UCLA the day after. So you can really get 4 out of it if you make a full trip out of it. Obviously, I know some would just probably come out for one. Probably the men's games, just given how good they are. And it was hard to hear anything. Like they had almost like at least half the crowd, I have to think. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, on to the game. Chad Baker-Mazara led with 15 points. Jacob Kofi led with 15 rebounds. And Baker-Mazara led with 3 assists. So USC had their chances to win, but they only shot 35% from the free throw line and 15% from three-point line. And I was really impressed with Gabe Dines, how he played. And then didn't get why he was pulled, even though, yeah, he had 4 fouls. I get that, but why did you take him out? He's been playing a lot better, done a much better job. His presence, especially on defense, is huge for this team, so I didn't really get why Eric Musselman pulled him just because he had 4 fouls. Well, I get, yeah, maybe you pull him for a minute, but I've kind of been of that logic where, yeah, you don't want a guy to foul out, but at least if he does, at least he played, you got all the minutes you were going to get out of him. So I didn't get that. And then Cam Woods, obviously I think he was good for depth, but I'm wondering, I feel like this team has better, more reliable guys like Jordan Marsh, or I wasn't sure, like Chad Baker-Mazara definitely, I think, even after now being back, after sitting most of the Maryland game due to a neck injury, he seems like he's fully back. Like, some of these things that are happening, I mean, just how I see it, just I'm struggling to understand the vision. Obviously, I trust Eric Musselman, but, it's really just sometimes frustrating just to like see, like, okay, why isn't this guy playing? Like, he's clearly playing good. And so it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens there. So we'll see what happens with all that. But, I definitely think that we'll see what happens when USC takes on Northwestern on Wednesday night. So we'll get to that now. So USC now sits at 14-4 overall and 3-4 in Big Ten play. So the Trojans next host Northwestern, who's 8-10 on the year and 0-7 in Big Ten play. That'll be on Big Ten Network at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. before traveling to Wisconsin. The Badgers are 13-5 and 5-2 on the season. That'll be on Sunday at 1 p.m. on Peacock. So USC needs to get back on track. You can't look ahead to Wisconsin, who beat Michigan, so easy to look ahead, but you got to take care of business against Northwestern. That Purdue game was very much a winnable game, which is why I think it left the team really frustrated. But especially when you shoot really bad from the free throw line, the free throws, don't expect to win. So USC needs to get that up. The free throws and three-pointers need to get back up. Because otherwise, USC was right there with Purdue and kind of out-rebounding them too. When I was seeing the stats they post inside Galen Center throughout the game, I always look at kind of field goal and three-point percentages, free throws, rebounds, and turnovers are kind of the main stats I look as all right, if one of these is way off and the score is tied, what has gone very wrong? So that's kind of what I was looking at throughout that game. So really we'll see what happens with USC. Hopefully they can turn around and, get back on track. Because I think this team is very good. They got a lot of talent. But they just, have obviously faced some tough opponents. But that's more what's going to come. That's what you signed up for by joining the Big Ten. So on to women's basketball. Who lost 62-55 to Maryland on Thursday. So, and for that one, Cara Dunn led with 20, and Maryland's 12th in the country. So Cara Dunn led 21 points and 5 rebounds and also 5 assists. USC was up at the end of the first quarter, but then they couldn't withstand the Terrapins making a comeback, and then it sent their losing streak to 4 games. With Kennedy Smith out for a 3rd straight game. But on Sunday, USC won 83-57 against Purdue, with Dunn leading with 21 points and 5 rebounds, and Jazzy Davidson leading with 6 assists. So USC was in control the whole time. They had Kennedy Smith back and were able to snap their 4-game losing streak. So a huge win they needed. And also, before I go on, big shout out to Felice, Julie, and Jim for inviting me courtside. Had a great time with y'all. So always have fun being courtside, just being right there next to the action is always really cool. So USC now sits at 11-7 on the year, 3-4 in Big Ten play, and the Trojans now head on the road. They'll face 15th seeded Michigan State on Thursday. That'll be at 5 p.m. on Big Ten Network. Spartans are 17-2 overall and 6-2 in Big Ten play. And then 8th seeded Michigan, who's 15-2 overall, 6-1 in Big Ten play, on Sunday at 11 a.m. on Big Ten Network. And so now we'll move on to men's volleyball, who's seeded 5th in the country and got a 3-0 win at Vanguard on Thursday. Dylan Klein led with 11 kills. Klein and Noah Roberts led with 2 aces each. Klein, Roberts, Wesley Smith, Kahali Kleeny, and Tiago Zamprogno led with 4 blocks each. Caleb Blanchett led with 26 assists, and Roberts led with 5 digs. So USC just took care of business against the Lions in their first MPSF match of the year and really just dominated throughout. That was a 25-16, 25-15, 25-15 score. Following night, Trojans come back to Galen Center and get a 3-1 win against 18th seeded Princeton. And a 3-1 win that went 25-17, 20-25, 26-24, 25-18. Klein led with 27 kills. Klein and Blanchett led with 2 aces each. Smith led with 8 blocks. Blanchett led with 49 assists, and Blanchett also led with 9 digs. So really what impressed me, even though USC lost the second set that I think they should have won, they really flexed their depth, especially in the last 2 sets, and really just showed that they could win with a lot of players. So they now move to 3-0 on the year and 1-0 in Big Ten play. So up next, they host Fort Valley State, who is 1-1 on the year. That'll be on Saturday at 5 p.m. on Big Ten Plus. So USC's kind of got a smooth schedule to start, and then obviously they'll start to ramp up over the next couple weeks, especially I think when Ohio State and then really CSUN and UC Santa Barbara start to come to town. So next up, we move to women's water polo, where the team got off to a 2-0 start by beating Azusa Pacific 17-8 at the CBU Lancer Joust. And beating UCSB 17-5. So we'll start with Azusa Pacific. Morgan Netherton led with 3 goals. Anna Reed had 2 saves in the first 3 quarters, and Lauren Schneider had 1 save in the final quarter. And then Azusa Pacific started strong, was leading after the first quarter, but then USC rallied and took over the game. And then against the Gauchos, Megan Makinich led with 3 goals, and then Anna Reed had 13 saves and played the entire game. And then USC just started strong and just never looked back. So Trojans are off to a 2-0 start and have 3 games coming up this weekend. So they host UC Santa Barbara at 5. So they face the Gauchos again at 5:45 p.m. on Saturday, and then they'll face Biola at 7 p.m. right after. So both games likely on overnight.com. And then the following day, they travel to San Diego State for a 1 p.m. matchup. So Gauchos are 0-2 on the year. Biola is 0-4, and the Aztecs are 3-1. So USC has a chance to really continue to start strong with this favorable schedule here at the beginning of the season. So track and field took part in the Spokane Sports Showcase and got 8 event wins in the women's 60 meter, women's 30 meter, or 60 meter, women's 300 meter, men's 300 meter, women's 800 meter, men's 800 meter, women's shot put, men's long jump, and men's high jump. So Trojans next have their next meet for the indoor season. That'll be on this upcoming Friday when they head to Lubbock for the Red Raider Invite, and then USC can hopefully build off the momentum from last weekend. So then swim and dive had a tough weekend, losing to both Stanford and Cal this weekend. On Friday against Cal, the men lost 178-122. The women lost 156-144 against Stanford. The men lost 208-91. Women lost 203-96. So it was a tough weekend for USC. They celebrated their seniors with this being the final meet they both have. Their final meet together at Watangzu. And then the big highlight of the weekend was Michael Chmielewski setting a record of 45.08 for a new USC record in the event. That was the previous record being set by Santo Condorelli in 2018. So up next so the records for the teams: men are now 3-5 on the year, women are 6-3. So up next, the women travel to UCLA on January 30th, and with platform diving taking place on January 31st, and then the men will host UNLV again on February 6th at 1 p.m. So men's tennis had their third duel of the year when they lost 5-2 to University of San Diego on Sunday. So USD got the doubles point, and then USC managed to get singles wins from Nathan Trouvé and Niels Hoffman. So they sit at 2-1 on the year and will take place in the ITA kickoff weekend. That will happen up in Berkeley. So USC will face UCF in the first round on Friday at 1 p.m. The Knights are 4-0 in the year, and then based on how they do, if they'll face the winner or loser, depending on how they do, of either Cal or Oklahoma on Saturday. Both the Golden Bears and the Sooners are 4-0 on the season. So hopefully USC can, put that USC game behind them and manage to do well. So women's tennis had their season start on last Tuesday with 2 matches, with 2 duels, and they got a 4-1 win against UCSB, where USC got the doubles points and singles wins from Jana Hossam, Krisha Mahendran, and Simone Kay, and a 4-0 win against LMU later that day. So they got the doubles point win again, and singles wins from Hossam, Imi Haddad, and Simone Kay. And then USC did actually have their first road trip where they faced where they're currently set to face former Pac-12 rivals. They got a 4-3 win against Arizona State yesterday, where they won the doubles point and got singles wins from Emma Charney, Mahendran, and Eugenia Zozaya. So USC has started the season 3-0. They face Arizona today at noon. So since I was not sure when I'd talk about it, obviously They got one more on this road trip, and then they have their ITA kickoff weekend in Charlottesville, so on the campus of the University of Virginia. They face 2-0 Wisconsin on Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then based on how they do, they'll face the winner or loser of Virginia or Rice the day after. The Cavaliers are 3-0 on the year, and the Owls are 1-0 on the year. So, men's golf resumes their spring action in the Copper Cup at El Niguel Country Club in Laguna Niguel. That'll be hosted by Arizona State today and tomorrow, so I'll bring results on that. And the women. So actually, we'll talk a little bit more about the Copper Cup. So, yeah, so pretty much, USC's back in spring action now, so I'll talk more about that next week. And just obviously a lot to go into that, but really, obviously excited to see this team back in action after the winter off. And then women's golf also resumes action with their spring season starting. Their first event will be the Battle of LA. That'll be this Friday against UCLA at Rancho La Quinta Country Club. So, women's team back in action with a crosstown showdown, with a Battle of LA crosstown showdown, whatever you want to call it. So 4's down always, no matter what. So that's going to pretty much do it for all the teams and what's coming up. I'll be sure to give updates every week for everything that's going on. So last week I went 2-2. Got wins against women's basketball against Purdue and men's volleyball against Princeton. Obviously saw the men's loss against Purdue and the women's loss against Maryland. So it puts me at 2-2 on the week. 38-14-1 for this school year, and 349-133-1 all time. So that puts me at 2-0 men's volleyball, 6-2 at men's basketball, and 5-4 at women's basketball. So my plans for this week are going to be to go to men's basketball on Wednesday night. As it stands right now, obviously, if anything changes, you'll for sure know. And to know exactly on game day what I will be at. If I repost the game day graphic put out by the team, that means I'm going to that game. So I don't put them out for games I don't go to. So that's going to do it for us here on Behind the Caution Tape. Thank you again, everybody who's been tuning in, subscribing. It means the world to me that you all do it and take the time. Be sure to catch me on the Voice of College Football tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'll see you all next week back here then. And of course, as always, fight on.